Welcome to Forensic Friday.
Where we examine the intersection of true crime, psychology, and the heart of being human in the middle of it all. Hey, girl.
Oh, hey.
I remembered the story I meant to tell you the other day when we were doing Night Stalker.
Oh, yeah. Okay, what is it?
Okay, so when I was, oh gosh, I think this was 2005. It was right around the time I met Gare. There was this like serial rapist in Denver. Do you remember this? He was like awful, like super violent. They were looking for him everywhere. It was this whole thing.
I think I remember. It was
Oh,
a long time ago.
yeah, it was a long time ago. It was like I think it was 2005. I was trying to find the news story earlier because I wanted to
Okay.
share it with you. So, this is the spookiest thing. So, I decide to go to Denver to watch a movie with some of my girlfriends. So, there were probably like 10 girls there, and we decided to watch The Notebook.
Okay.
Okay, and this is like even before streaming. I'm pretty sure we rented it.
Okay.
Anyway, it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
So I'm there with my friends. I'm downtown Denver and kind of in like a walk-up apartment kind of thing.
Mhm.
So not in a neighborhood. We're like, whatever. So anyway, I'm there with my friends and my phone just keeps going off and going off and going off. And I'm watching this movie with my friends and I'm trying to figure out like who's calling me. So finally I look, it's my mom. So I
Okay.
call her and she's like, Jenny, I don't know what you're doing, but there's this guy running around Denver and you're just running around, not telling me where you are, blah, blah, blah. It's like, Mom, I'm fine. I'm with like 10 girls. I'm
Right.
at my friend's house. Everything is fine. She was like, Janine, you got to be careful. Like, when are you leaving? Who are you leaving with? I don't want you just walking around down there. Cause parking in Denver, I was
It
parked
was a nightmare.
not
Yeah.
close, a
Right.
street parking a couple blocks away.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, Mom, we're all going to leave together. I'm literally with 10 people. I got to go. I'm watching The Notebook, right?
Right.
I got to get back.
I
There's a
gotta
lot
go.
happening here. This is important.
Uh-huh.
Ryan Gosling is adorable. I got to get back to my
Oh
movie.
my gosh, he is.
And so I'm kind of irritated with her. And then she keeps checking in and she's texting me, have you left yet? Are you in your car? Are you on your way home? Like she's trying to get a hold of me. And I was so frustrated. And then finally I was like, my mom has a sixth sense about things.
Yeah.
So I did make the decision walking to my car. We all kind of walked each other out. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And
Mm-hmm.
and I think I was parked the furthest away, so somebody like gave me a ride to my car, but we all kind of hung together and got each other to our cars safely. The next day, I wake up, I look at the news, they picked him up like 3 blocks from where I was, and
Oh
he
my
was
gosh.
wandering around.
That's terrifying.
Isn't that so scary? So, Tina, your sixth sense is on point.
On point.
I
And this
know.
guy was a stalker?
He was a serial rapist, but
Okay.
he would basically knock on the door. This is why my mom was freaked out. He would come up to the door, knock on the door, and then force his way in. That's what he was doing.
Oh, great.
And so she was just worried about me. Like, she didn't know how many people I was going to be with or whatever. So
Right,
she was
right.
thinking about me. Sure enough, they also caught the Texas Seven. Remember when they escaped prison?
No.
Like, I think they called them the Texas Seven. They had caught like five of them.
Okay.
And they were saying they might be in Colorado. And I remember going to my car at like 5:30 in the morning to go to school. And this was when I was in high school. And I was like, oh my God, they're going to get me, between my front door and my car. This is not a thing. They caught the final two at a hotel in the same parking lot as where I got my nails done.
Oh, that's
The day
crazy.
I got my nails done.
Of course.
So I don't know. I'm pretty lucky, but apparently scary people end up being in my vicinity right before they get arrested.
That is so wild.
I know, isn't that nuts?
Glad they didn't run into you.
Well, yeah, I know. I mean, I'm pretty tough cookie, but I don't want to run into any of them.
Yeah.
Oh, scary.
Well, that's super wild.
But I forgot to tell you that during the Night Stalker, I was like, Nat, remind me, I have a story to tell you. And then I never
Oh,
thought of it.
yeah.
That
We
was the
both
one.
forgot.
I,
Okay. Well, I think what's interesting is, a lot of cases that you and I focus on tend to be, probably mostly surrounding domestic violence and,
mm-hmm,
in home, in the family type of
mm-hmm,
situations. But what I'm finding is that there are quite a few cases where it's just a random person.
I know.
I
Wrong
mean,
place, wrong time.
yeah, that kind of stuff, or break-ins and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
You know, I'm curious for you. So I have our case for today, and I'm really excited to share with you because this is crazy. It's a crazy case.
You told me earlier it's nuts.
It's
I know
nuts.
nothing. I literally know
I know, I
nothing.
just told you that yeah, anyway. So before we jump in, I'm curious. It's kind of a maybe a weird question, but what comes up for you when you think of cold cases? Like cases that never got solved.
Excitement. I want to crack one. It's like on my bucket list to crack a cold case. I
Oh my
think we
gosh.
should pick one. In Douglas County has a list of cold cases. I think we should pick one and try to crack it on the podcast.
Okay.
I really do. I think we should pick one and investigate it.
It might be like kind of a shit show of a show, but we can do our best.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean like over time. Like we'll call
Oh yeah.
people, we'll go check it out.
Oh, okay. I'm
Fun.
down.
I know.
Let's do it.
I would like to devote my life to cold cases when I retire. This is what I will do. I'll be the 90-year-old who's like, "Where were
I love that.
you?"
Um, so this one is kind of a cold case. It was a cold case for a little bit. Okay. So it starts in August of 1990, specifically August 10th of 1990. Okay.
Okay.
In Dickinson, Texas.
Okay.
There was this 8-year-old girl who lived with her mom. So the 8-year-old's name is Jennifer Schuett. And her mom, it's like the two of them. Okay.
Okay.
No, I didn't really get family history. I looked, but the
Okay.
case is so insane that I was more obsessed with this. But it's just her and mom, right? Just doing their thing,
Mm-hmm.
living in kind of a rougher area of their town in an apartment. Okay.
Okay.
So in the report that I read, so Jennifer, who's 8 years old, hasn't really ever slept in her own room. Okay. So she always sleeps with mom.
Oh,
I know. It's kind of sweet. And then I'm like, my daughter will not sleep with me.
absolutely not. No. You got to cut them off somewhere. We need our
I
sleep.
know. 6 months, as long as our basement's done, we'll see.
Yeah.
Um, so she never really slept in her own room. She said she didn't like sleeping alone. She didn't like sleeping in the dark. Okay. Well, on August 10th, that night, her mom had asked her to go to her own room because her mom had to get up really early. Okay.
I don't like where this is going.
I know. So she sleeps, she goes to her own room. She reads herself to sleep. Okay.
Oh,
And I know she's real sweet.
hmm.
Her pictures are so cute too, though. She was like this cute little 8-year-old.
Well, what a precious 8-year-old to go just read herself to sleep.
I
Oh, so
know.
sweet.
Um, so she goes to her room, reads herself to sleep. She then was woken up by a man who covered her mouth and nose, and the guy said he was a police officer. Okay.
Okay.
And there's a few different like narratives of this. It was like that she woke up, like one story was that she woke up while he was like running down the street with her. So she was like still asleep when he got her out of her room.
Okay.
One story was that she woke up in her room and he had covered, but regardless, he covered her nose and mouth. And when she woke up, he said he was a police officer.
Okay.
So it made her trust him a little bit, right? Because he was like, don't
Mhm.
freak out, I'm a police officer.
Okay.
Okay. So he puts her in his car and they drive through town. Mind you, this is not a big town from what it sounds like.
Mm-mm.
So they literally drive past her grandparents' house
Okay.
and he takes her to the parking lot of her elementary school. And this is in summer, right? This is in August. So
Yeah.
kids aren't in school yet, right? So she's like,
Okay.
I think between second and third grade at 8 years old.
And so it's like what, 8, 9 o'clock at night, something like that. It's like after bedtime,
Well, no, it's like this, like the middle of the night.
middle of the night. Okay.
Yeah. So they go to, yeah, so no one's around at
Okay.
all because it's middle of the night, but also like school's not in, so no one's coming in the morning. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay.
So they go to this parking lot. He says, your mom will be here soon. Obviously, mom doesn't show up. So then he drives her a little bit further to this abandoned. like overgrown lot with that's like kind of surrounded by field.
Okay.
Okay, so we both probably know where this is going,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
He offers her candy. She doesn't take it because she was taught not to take candy from strangers, but she felt confused and conflicted because she's like, well, if he's a police officer, like I should trust him, but I don't trust him. And while they were driving between the school and this other lot, she starts to get a little, I want to say a little like smart and sassy
Okay.
because she's like, okay, well, if you're a police officer, where's your gun? Where's your badge?
Yeah. Where's your uniform?
Hmm. So they stop and she's still asking these questions and he goes, "Well, my gun's in the back." So she peeks over the back of the seat and that's when things started. And I'm not going to go into details because it's gruesome and we don't need to know all the things that happened to a little girl.
Mm.
But it was not good. Okay?
And he killed her.
Well, hold on.
Okay. Okay. I'll wait. I'll wait. Garrett, delete that.
No, you can keep it.
I'm
Just
jumping ahead. I'm jumping
I'm
ahead.
not going to tell you yet.
Oh, you're going to make me wait.
So, in short, he sexually assaulted her,
Okay.
right? She passed out. She said she passed out numerous times. She was like in and out of just like fainting because there's times where he would put pressure on her neck and all this stuff. So
Mm.
she was like in and out, but she ended up passing out for quite some time. When she woke up and she was being dragged by her ankle. So he's literally dragging her on the ground by her ankle. Okay, this smart little 8-year-old is like, I'm sure as heck gonna keep playing dead because if I don't play dead, he's gonna kill me. Right? So she
Yeah.
plays dead, but then she also realizes that her throat is cut,
Oh, geez.
like almost ear to ear, throat cut.
Oh my gosh.
Hmm. So he lays her. So when he stops dragging her, he laid her body on a fire ant pile. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I hate him.
Oh, yeah. Fire ant pile, and she was there for about 12 to 14 hours.
Oh
Hmm.
my gosh. My dad got bit by some kind of ant. It had to have been like a fire ant over like in the backyard, but over a fence.
Uh-huh.
And he was like trying to get this thing off of him. He came running, jumped
Oh
over the
no.
fence. Oh,
Yeah. They're
they're the
painful.
worst.
Yeah, and so she's laying on the fire ant pile. Her throat is cut, right? Like this little girl is just a mess.
Mm.
She was found by a group of kids playing in the field, and so they were able to, get help, and she was flight for life. Okay. So to answer your question, she did not die.
Oh my gosh, she survived that?
She survived. Her laceration went so deep it cut through her trachea, but it missed all the major arteries.
Oh wow.
So it's like the only way she lived, but she was like near death when they found her.
I'm sure, yeah.
Um, so what's really sad, besides the whole fact that she went through that, is so she goes to the hospital, obviously, and she suffers from a lot of panic attacks because now she trusts no men.
Of course. Why
And she
would you?
has
Yeah.
and she has all these male surgeons and male doctors trying to help her. And she's just like in panic mode because she's like, well, this dude said he was a police officer and
Mm.
look at me, right?
So why would I believe a doctor, anybody?
Yes. And so she didn't, yeah. And so when she was writing her story, so
Mm.
she'd like write things that happened because she couldn't talk yet. And they told her, you won't ever be able to talk
Mm.
because of how deep it was in her trachea. Um, but so she'd have to write her like different answers to questions, give that to her mom, and then her mom would have to go give it to the police officer that was outside the room because she would not allow any police officers in her room, which I'm like, yeah, I get that.
Oh, and 8-year-olds also, I mean, they're not the best writers at 8 either. So that was probably really challenging for
Mhm,
her.
mhm. Yeah. So, like I said, they told her she'd never be able to talk again, but she was a determined little one
Mm.
and was able to get her voice back.
She's amazing.
I know. So her case was a cold case until October 13th, 2009.
Oh my gosh. What is
Mm-hmm.
that, 19 years later?
19 years later.
So she's what, 25, 26, something like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a good
Mm-hmm.
mathematician. There was a hit in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about why they found that out. So the evidence that they had was there was quite a bit, but what's interesting, and we'll get into like how they didn't catch him. Remind you, this was back in when everything happened, 1990. They didn't have the technology that we have that we got
Well,
later.
it's kind of like John Bonet, where they
Yep.
collected DNA, but they couldn't test it until much later.
Well, that exactly. And there wasn't just like all these other ways that we can find stuff out, like
Yeah.
tracking through family members and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So there's quite a bit of evidence that was collected from the case, specifically Jennifer's clothes and men's underwear and a t-shirt that was all found together, but it was like around the corner from where she was found.
What an idiot.
I
He
know,
dropped all his
super
stuff like
dumb.
around the corner, like, there's my undies. What a moron.
Literally so dumb.
Oh, geez.
And her clothes, yeah. I'm like, okay. I mean, thank God he was stupid. You
Well,
know
I
what
was
I mean?
gonna say, yeah, I mean, thank goodness.
Yeah. So because of the new technology, they were able to get DNA from the clothing, and they ran the DNA in CODIS, and they were
Mhm.
able to find who her attacker was because he had a previous offense of assaulting another woman who was in Arkansas in 1996.
Oh, so they caught him because of his DNA in a later case.
Yes.
Okay.
I know. We don't hate that.
Well, that's the thing, because once you get caught, your DNA is in the system, but until you
Mhm.
get caught for something, they don't have your DNA. But
Exactly.
now they have ancestry, so your Aunt Becky or whatever can be
Yeah,
and they can track your ass down.
you are gonna, y'all, it is hard to pull stuff off in these days, like in this day and
Oh,
age.
yeah.
So like if you have some weird ass thoughts that you want to be a perpetrator, get therapy before you do anything.
Yeah, not with me, but with somebody.
Yeah, not with either one of us. We aren't
No,
trained for that.
no, we don't want to do that.
Nope. Um, okay. So yeah, assaulting another woman in 1996. I did not find more information on that case,
But that was
unfortunately.
an adult woman, not a
It
child.
sounds like it was an adult. He was convicted in that case for kidnapping her, the woman, and
Okay.
spent 4 years in prison for that one.
Oh my gosh.
I know. He was sentenced to like many more, but he only did 4. So he gets out of prison and he gets married and has children of his own. I know.
Can you imagine marrying him and finding this out?
Oh my gosh. I know. So gets married, has his own children, and also has stepchildren, which I'm like, I don't know who I'm more scared for, his children or his stepchildren, to be honest.
Stepchildren,
Oh, for sure.
statistically, but yeah.
Statistically, but let's be real.
Sometimes I hate what we know.
I know. And how our brains work. Like, I'm like, ooh, you get married and have kids, and then you also have stepkids. I'm like, ooh,
I know.
wonder if any of them were victims.
I know.
So the perpetrator's name was Dennis Bradford. Okay, I haven't said his name yet. And he was living in Arkansas.
Okay.
So they find all this out. They go, okay, so we got Dennis Bradford. He lives in Arkansas. So now they're like, but can we put him in Texas
Mm,
19 years earlier?
yeah.
Right? Like they do have his DNA, but maybe because of how late it was, like maybe there was something that they weren't like, we can really hang our hat on that?
Yeah, totally.
So they're trying to figure that out.
Well,
So,
that's what's going on with Koberger right now. Like they're trying to argue
yes,
about the evidence that maybe the sheath was put there by somebody else. So yeah, it's his DNA, but who put it there? We don't know. Like that kind of stuff.
exactly. Yep, yep. So that's interesting. I was actually thinking of Koberger with this case.
Yep.
So through some research, they found an old arrest that he had in Dickinson, Texas in 1987.
They could place him there then, at least in 87.
Exactly, which is just 3 years before he kidnapped and assaulted Jennifer.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but they can place him there, right? They're like, you've been in Dickinson, Texas,
Yeah.
in 5 years of this situation. So he was arrested, okay, in 2009. So they did arrest him. The video of them interviewing him is insane.
Like creepy.
No, it's like he, I mean, he just like immediately told on himself. I'm gonna literally read it to you line by line.
Oh, yeah, please do.
So they really quick, they brought him back to Texas for questioning. So he's in
Okay.
Texas now. Okay. It literally was probably the easiest interrogation these officers have ever had in their entire life.
It's like he couldn't wait to talk about it.
Well, kinda. So okay, I'm gonna read it to you, okay?
Okay, okay.
Detectives, you ever heard of the name Jennifer Schuett? Dennis, yes. Detectives, did you ever come into contact with her? Dennis, yes. Detectives, tell me about that. No. Dennis.
I know who she is. I talked to her, but that's it.
That's it.
Not
So
done with
Dennis,
now.
he says no. Then he waits for a minute. And then he says, my whole life for the past 20 years has been utterly and completely fucked up because of my mistake. All I'm telling you.
I don't know what I would do. I mean, I interview people. I'm not interrogating them, right?
Oh, but we
But
ask about cases. We say, tell me about your case.
tell me
And
about your case. We do
most of the time,
psychology
they're like,
screenings where we're asking
no.
weird stuff, just to see what they
Yeah.
have to say. I don't know what I would do if they're
Well, and
like
most of the time when we ask for their case, they're like, they tell us some
some version.
some version of not the truth.
Never. I mean, okay, not never. Rarely is it line by line accurate.
Yes.
And we have heard some pretty gnarly things over the
Yes.
years.
That have evidence to go to the line by line.
Yes. But I don't
So,
know what I would do if the person I'm interviewing is like, "Yep, I know, I've heard that name. I've come into contact with her." No. And then saying there was
yeah.
a mistake.
So detectives, I can tell obviously this affects you a lot, but I think you would, if you were to see her, you'd be extremely proud of her.
Oh, that cop read that right.
Dennis bursts into tears
Yeah, totally. That was the right move on the cop's part.
and says, "Thank goodness," and then says she's alive, like asking she's alive. He's literally sobbing for
Hmm.
like a while.
Hmm.
Okay. And they confirm that she's alive. He says, you have no idea how hard I've prayed for that. I am a firm believer in Christ, which I'm like, dang it. Worst representation of Christ followers.
You know
Anyway,
what? That's above my pay grade.
it is. Okay. I am a firm, so he says, you have no idea how hard I've prayed for that. I am a firm believer in Christ, but I had no idea. And it was about 2 years later, and I ran. I just took off.
Mm. So he's saying he left Texas two
Yeah.
years after.
Yes.
And
Oh
that
no,
they,
I'm sorry, 2 days. 2 days later.
oh, 2 days after.
Yeah.
And he's kind of acting like he was tortured about this after, and he's crying.
Yes, I will show you the footage.
Okay. That cop played that so right. I was literally thinking, and you know me when I get in this mode, I was literally thinking he's going to crack because he's got this weird thought
He has,
process about this.
well, and I think he could read the fact that they're like in the interview, you can kind of see that
Yeah,
he's like not going to talk about it, but you can see that there's
he wants to.
bigger emotion there.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So yeah, he just cracks. And I think the cop, you're right. The cop played it well because he played on the emotion
He saw the emotion.
and he
And it
played
wasn't
on.
anger, defensiveness. It was more like, oh, I've been
Yeah.
dying to talk about this.
Yes. Yes.
So he's relieved that she lived.
Yes.
At least that's what he's saying.
That's what he's saying. And
Okay.
it's hard. Like, I'll show you the footage.
Yeah.
Like, there's 90% of me that just wants to be like, you're so full of it, but I actually like don't think he is. I think
Hmm.
there was this part of him. You and I don't work with sex offenders, okay? And that's for many reasons,
Unless they're sex offending against their romantic partner, which happens.
which does happen, but we
But
don't
we
work
we
like,
don't work with men or women who abuse minors. We don't work with
no,
that.
no.
Mm-mm.
So I have heard of cases where, these, and we actually talked about one, kind of.
Yeah.
I don't know how remorseful he was, but, where people do want to make these changes and they just like really feel like they can't. And it's like this whole thing.
Well, we talked about the role of pornography and the
Yes.
escalation of that and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's part of me that's like, maybe that was kind of him. Like he's like this tormented guy who has this really sick
Hmm.
desire and sickness inside, and he doesn't want it, but he acted on it.
Hmm.
And there might actually be some level of remorse. It doesn't, I mean, he's still a POS in my book, but
Well, yeah, but he's not acting like a psychopath necessarily. It
no.
depends on how deep the emotion is because they can be pretty manipulative. But
Yeah, I'll show you
yeah,
the footage. Here,
yeah,
let
I'll
me
watch
show it
it.
to you. I'm going to show it to you right now real fast.
Also, we should put it on socials.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to share this with you. What do you think? I don't know if we can necessarily share that footage because of how the quality, but you just watched the video. What do you think about his reaction?
It's fascinating. I saw that it was a FBI special agent that did
Hmm.
the interviewing, and that tracks because that was a highly trained individual to pick up on that in the
Hmm.
interrogation. And it's
Hmm.
a very different feel. So people who are less experienced in interrogation sometimes like they just go really hard.
Yeah,
You
like
and I know it's
aggressive.
usually the softer stuff that
Yeah.
either soft or surprise.
Yeah.
I surprised somebody today and it was fascinating. But it's one or the other, you know. Um,
Hmm.
he's fairly believable in that moment. It's
Hmm.
you will never know, and I wasn't in the room with him, but I can see why it tugs at you a little bit. Like there's real tears.
Yeah. It's like this, like emote, like,
There's like a
thank
relief.
God it's
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, there's a relief to it for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of hard to tell, but when you see it, it's just like he couldn't hold
Mm-mm.
it in.
Yeah.
So obviously there was an arrest and he admitted to it. Okay. So she went to go see him. Yes.
Seriously?
Well, yes, but they didn't talk. So she saw him through like a one-way mirror.
Did she want to like foreclosure just to know that they have him?
Yeah.
Okay. I get that.
Well, well, that I have some fun things about her.
Okay.
So she just wanted to see him. Like, and she said, because she was so young, she was like, I didn't know who it was. And she was like, I was relieved that he's not someone that was like a close family friend. Like,
Oh,
she was like, I really had no clue who he was. And so that actually brought her some relief.
okay.
And I think just like closure of like, this man is not walking around anymore.
Oh
And
yeah.
like, this is done.
Oh yeah.
She said, she goes, there wasn't like overwhelming emotions either for her. She just felt relief.
But she didn't talk to him.
She didn't talk to him. I think a year later, right? So obviously preparing for trial takes a minute.
Yeah.
He was charged with attempted capital murder and they were waiting for trial. Okay. During the time of, well, I think the time of when he was arrested to when he was charged, he was put on suicide watch because I think he had some suicidal attempts or
Okay.
like ideation earlier.
Like
And
before the confession or after?
I think both.
Okay.
So they had him on a suicide watch, okay?
Mm,
Because he had attempted suicide after he attacked her in 1990.
okay.
So because of all that, they were like, okay, well, clearly he's not, we got to keep an eye on him. Unfortunate. So he was in like, ultra, they like kept an eye on him.
Okay.
They moved him without informing anybody to a different prison and put him in general population.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And so he had access to things he didn't have access to before
Okay.
and ended up committing suicide.
Okay. Well, I was thinking maybe they killed him.
No,
Yeah, you don't want to go in Gen Pop if you're a sex
no,
offender.
no.
But he
Yeah.
was able to get access
Hmm.
to
Bed sheets.
something. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And she was upset. I mean, she was like, I really wanted to have my day in court and,
Mm,
hand it to this guy. But she
mm.
wasn't able to. On the 20-year anniversary of her attack, she went and read her victim impact letter to his grave.
Okay, like a little baddie.
She was like, you know what, bro?
I'm still gonna let you know.
In some way, you are going to hear this.
Hmm.
Okay. So before I share a little bit more about her, I don't have a ton more, but I have just a little bit. What are some of your thoughts?
I think she's incredible. I think
Hmm.
she's absolutely incredible. I could understand her wanting to see him. Like, I think that's why sometimes people insist on seeing the body when a loved one passes too. It's like this closure, there's a finality to it.
Yep.
I think it's really unfortunate that she didn't get to have her day in court because I know how healing that can be, having worked
Hmm.
with victims and survivors. It's very interesting.
Hmm.
Interesting that he killed himself. Kind of makes sense. He has a little bit of a tortured soul vibe for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, woe is me.
Yeah, woe is me,
Like,
but
God forbid I
probably a
did this
fair bit
thing.
of self-loathing too.
Well, yeah, I feel like most, at least somewhat aware sex offenders
Yeah, they have self-loathing. Yeah.
probably don't like themselves very much.
Hmm. Yeah.
So she went on. She goes and speaks and tells audiences about her story
Hmm.
and, how she's a survivor and not really a victim. And she's also a victim advocate.
That's amazing.
I
We love
know.
our victim advocates too.
We
They're amazing.
do. Oh my gosh, they're amazing people. So, I think the heart for me in all this is just that end, is that she used her story to empower herself and to keep pushing forward
Mm.
and is advocating for other individuals who their voices have been taken from them and helps them have their voice. And she literally almost had her voice taken from her, like literally.
I'm also glad they tracked him down
Hmm.
because I wonder if he would have been linked to more things. It takes time for them to do those kind of searches and to connect all those dots. They
Yeah.
kind of have to have a reason to go back in for
Hmm.
cases that old. They have to have a reason. And in this case, they did. They went back and got back into the DNA and tested it, but there could have been other victims too. I think that's the thing that
Oh,
I'm in all of these cases, Night Stalker, this one, other cases we've
yeah.
done,
Yeah.
there's a definite trajectory. Brian Kohlberger, he
Yeah.
would have done this again and again and again and again if he got away with it. He wasn't honestly like maybe he'll be a genius in court. I don't know. I don't think he was smart enough to do it again. I mean, he left a knife sheath at the scene. So like
He's dumb.
good luck, bro. But maybe he had some master plan that will unfold in court, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But he would have offended again if he hadn't already.
Hmm. Well, and honestly, what it made me think of too, what is John Bonet's case?
Yes. Yes.
Because they're both little. I mean, I think John Bonet was a little younger,
Mm-hmm.
but it takes me back to her case around
Mm.
cold cases and how these things don't always get figured out. And I'm just so glad that this one did.
It's
And I know
also
he
weird.
died, but he's not walking around.
Well, and he didn't seem completely shocked that she was alive. Like he was overcome with emotion,
Hmm.
but he did not leave her in a survivable state.
Mm-mm.
So I wonder if he did actually pray that she survived.
I
Because
think
there
he
was a
did.
part of him that just seemed really just relieved, but not like he'd thought about that before. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It wasn't
I
like,
think he was
oh,
happy he got caught, to be honest.
yeah, I think
I
so.
do.
Sometimes it's a relief,
Yeah.
to them.
Yeah. And I think, the psychology part of this goes back to and I said this to you before, and you kind of helped me understand it a little bit more with sex offenders, is it's like this, it's this sickness, right? And it's not something that they can always help. And oftentimes it's from their
Um,
own trauma
oh, yeah.
and all of that. And so you just, I look at his response and I'm like, he actually might have had some remorse and just really didn't like himself,
Mm.
you
Why do
know?
you think he didn't stand trial? Why'd he kill himself?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I think he has his own kids, had his own kids,
Mm-hmm.
had stepkids, had family, had
Probably
his,
didn't want it all to come out, maybe.
well, I mean, it already did come out, but I think he probably just didn't want to live with the anguish that he wasn't gonna, I mean, I can't say that his family would have wanted to be around him or talk to him after all that,
That's true.
you
The thing
know?
that's weird about it is if he had that strong of a feeling about her, why wouldn't he want to see her at court? Because he would have seen her at court.
Hmm.
And
I
he
think,
was pretty invested.
I don't know if it was as much about that. I think it was more about him, the anguish he was living in,
Yeah.
and maybe he couldn't see her in his own mind. Maybe he was like, that would be too painful for him,
Okay, that might make sense.
you
That makes
know?
more sense. It has something to do with her.
Yeah.
I
I
think it has
think
something to do with
that
her.
it would probably would have been too painful for him to see her.
Mm. And face what he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that she lived because he's obviously happy she lived.
Yes. But seeing her and knowing what he did to her.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So,
That helped my brain. I was like, why did he do that? That makes sense to me.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's a combo. I do think it's because he's just probably there's so much shame there
Mm-hmm.
based on his reaction that, seeing her would have caused more of that. And I do think his family probably has to do with that too. Like he has kids.
Well, what year did they solve this?
2009.
Okay, so she married him, I'm assuming knowing he had a background,
I don't know.
which is, well, I mean, of course it's a different time. Now you can just get online and figure out what people's histories are.
Well, and here's the thing. It just depends on their view of relationships. I mean, I know a lot of individuals who don't do background checks on people they go out with, and
Well,
then
not everybody is insane as we are. I background check the mailman. Like I want to
right.
know I want to know everything about everybody who's around me.
But I don't know if like based on, I just don't know how educated this family was. I don't know any of that. And sometimes they just don't look at that.
Well, and in 98, to be fair, that
Mhm.
wasn't as accessible. So
No.
it's not out of the realm of possibility. I think it's actually likely that he
Mhm.
didn't tell his wife.
Oh, he
And
didn't.
he's telling himself, I'm turning over a new leaf, like an
Yeah.
addict, right? It's like I'm
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
I'm moving on forward, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he may not have told her. So I'd be so curious to know if his wife knew,
Yeah.
you know.
Hmm.
Hmm. What an interesting case now. And what a
I
baddie of a survivor.
know. I mean, I'm like sitting there and I mean, she's talking in her interviews and she's like, I mean, full on, her voice is fine,
Mm,
like she's telling the story. It's crazy. She's sitting with this detective who was very much a part of her case. And he was the one who's like, because it got transferred
yeah.
states, right? And he was like, I wasn't going to let this go. We were going to really try to figure this out. And yeah, it was a cool story to read and to watch.
Mm, good for her.
Little survivor 8-year-old.
Little survivor 8-year-old.
And it didn't, like she used it.
She did.
She used her story instead of sitting in the shame and trauma of that. instead of staying there, she decided to do something different with it. You know what I mean?
You know what? She's like Elizabeth Smart.
Yes.
You know, Elizabeth Smart is just like one of the strongest people ever.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
I just love a good survivor.
mhm. I know.
Well, thanks for sharing that case with me, bud. That's a good one.
Of course, yeah.
I'm just glad you shared it, and I'm really glad I watched the interrogation. Now we'll see if we can post it because that's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, and it's helpful to see his
It
response,
is helpful to see.
because then he commits suicide. And so it's like, you know, I do think there was a very large element of shame for him.
Yeah, that's believable, I think, based on what I saw.
Hmm.
He's either an extraordinary manipulator, which doesn't jive with him killing himself either, to be honest.
Oh.
But
But you and I've seen manipulators, and when they cry,
mhm.
it's different.
Well, my favorite is when you and I are like, "Did you see a tear?" I don't
Yeah.
think he
Oh my
squeezed out a
gosh.
tear.
Every time. Every
Every time it's
time.
like, I didn't see
I
any
didn't,
any tears.
I saw no precipitation come from their face.
No. I've even seen somebody like jam their finger in the corner of their eye at one time trying to make it tear.
No.
Mhm. So
That's
I
so,
said, "You got something in your eye?" That's what I said.
what'd they
What's going
say?
on? They're like, "Yeah, you know." And I was like, "Okay,
I'm so sad.
yeah, I know. Not
Oh
buying
my
it. Not
God.
buying what you're selling. Sorry."
So, yes, that was a good case. And, a glimmer of hope too. Like not
Yeah.
all these cases are doom and gloom, and some of them are redemptive. We've shared a few really awesome
Yeah.
redemptive stories lately, and keep listening, y'all. We got some good stuff coming for you guys.
We do. We've got some things lined up.
I know, I'm so excited. I'm working on one for April. You already know, I told you.
Ooh, I do. I'm working on one too.
Mm,
In
it'll
the
be so
same
good.
vein.
Well, yeah. Yeah. We'll have to talk.
Ooh. Stay tuned, folks. We'll see you next week, as always.
Bye, forensic friends.
I'm Janine.
And I'm Nat.
And as always, thanks for listening and join us next week for more crime, psychology, and heart.